Everyone, thanks for joining us. This is Yield Talks on the Edge podcast. I'm DeFi Dad here with Nomadic. Normally, every week, we host a live space to review new and interesting DeFi to spotlight what we think is an interesting on-chain opportunity. Today is unique, though, because you are able to ultimately achieve exposure to the Hype token through the offering that is formerly Eyenovia and now Hyperion. And so we're going to talk about what is, I believe, the first NASDAQ-listed company to use Hype as a Treasury reserve asset. We'll talk about what this means, how this sort of mirrors the playbook of what Saylor did with Bitcoin. There's been a lot of interest growing in ETH Treasury companies. And then there's been a new wave of interest in Sol Treasury companies. And now we also have Hype Treasury companies. So if you're into Hyperliquid, this should be an interesting conversation for you. Hyunsu, can we kick off with you just more about the background of Eyenovia? Like, just tell us the story of what was Eyenovia? How did this all come about with this like rebrand into Hyperion? And yeah, really just want to get into like the future of what is Hyperion as a Hyperliquid DeFi company.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for making the intro. So I think the story starts even earlier than that, around January of this year, with the crypto treasury company Meta, and, following Hyperliquid since late 2023, I saw that there was a really interesting opportunity to have Hyperliquid as a reserve asset. And so, it's having conversations with various folks around making this a reality. And around late May of this year, effectively was tapped with the idea of, hey, what if we actually did this and created a pubco for Hyperliquid and Hyperliquid related strategies? And so we went on the public company search, met with a couple of different ones, and Eyenovia and the existing team and board were very open-minded and engaged with the idea of, adding this strategy to the company. And so from kind of that decision date to closing, which was about 2 weeks ago, to now, we've kind of executed on the vision of bringing in these funds, purchasing the Hype, creating our validator. And now as we look to the future, it's more about how can we actually create, yield and generate returns on the underlying asset in a way that no other digital asset can do today. That's kind of the story thus far and how we look forward.
And I guess going a bit further back in the story, we have one of the biggest Hyperliquid bulls on this space right now with Max. So I believe there's like a connection between you two. I think I saw Max tweet out, did you guys like meet in school or something? Like maybe just give us some insight into how do you guys know each other and what's the relationship here between you two?
I would love to speak to this because this is some great lore for those that may not be aware of the story. But way back in 2017, I was studying abroad in Edinburgh. At the same time, Max happened to be as well. Didn't know each other before then. Had an opportunity to meet and really connected based on our shared interest of crypto at the time. Stayed in touch throughout the years. And then when we both started our professional careers, myself at EY and Max at Deloitte, just had more things to talk about. And things really kicked off for us around DeFi summer. We're following all the, sushi, yam, all the fun coins, and it brought us to Puerto Rico in 2021. And so we grinded for years there, and then maxed out Hyperliquid, put me on, and the rest is history, as they say.
REDSTONE is building the Oracle backbone to unlock real-world finance on-chain and next-gen DeFi. With modular gas-efficient feeds across over 110 chains, trusted by 170 clients, supporting over 1,300 assets, from value-accruing stablecoins, liquid staking and restaking tokens, to treasuries, private credit, and commodity tokens, REDSTONE delivers accurate real-time data where it matters most. The biggest platforms and protocols in DeFi today choose REDSTONE oracles, such as Athena, Securitize, BlackRock Biddle, Pendle, Spark, and Maple Finance. If you're building the future of finance on-chain, you need REDSTONE's leading modular blockchain oracle layer. To learn more, go to redstone.finance, and thanks to REDSTONE for supporting us here at the Edge Podcast and Edge Newsletter. Maple Finance is one of my favorite products in DeFi. It is a gateway to sustainable real yield powered by over 1 billion in AUM across USDC and BTC products. And now with SYRUPUSDC by Maple, anyone can earn institutional grade yield. Learn more at syrup.fi, and thanks to Maple for supporting us here at the Edge podcast and Edge newsletter. Spark, one of the leading DeFi protocols, has had a year like no other, deploying $2 billion into RWAs with BlackRock's Biddle and other institutional giants, adding over $1 billion in TVL, and distributing over $9 billion across the DeFi ecosystem. Now, Spark are setting their sights on further global expansion and have introduced the Spark token, which is available on leading centralized exchanges. There's never been a better time to discover Spark, the on-chain capital allocator. Learn more at spark.fi. I think we need a little bit more background just on these crypto treasury companies. So I think MicroStrategy has been the most iconic, most well-known name in this space. So maybe you can give us just a high-level overview of what is the significance of a crypto treasury publicly traded company, so that we can understand the playbook for Hyperion.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, say whatever you want about Saylor, but he really is a pioneer in terms of having so much conviction in Bitcoin, and then also being able to engineer the public company that he owned in a way that, they are, $100 billion plus company today, right? So the way that we understand it is that these vehicles are effectively able to raise funds, if they don't have the funds already, by issuing shares or convertible debt. And then they take these funds to purchase crypto assets and hold them on the balance sheet. And so when you have something outside of cash on the balance sheet, there are considerations that apply into the NAV, right? The net asset value. So when you look at most treasury companies today, the big kind of consideration is mNAV, or the market cap over the net asset value. And so currently the market rewards those that they have more conviction in. And so if that's the case, you trade at a premium to NAV, to mNAV, and then you're able to go out into the market, raise more cash, and continue this flywheel effect. Now, the really important distinction that I want to make with Hyperion compared to any other treasury company today is that we are not a pure treasury company, because the asset that we're holding is not just a static asset. Hyperliquid is valuable because, sure, you can purchase it and you can stake it, and there is a baseline yield for helping to contribute to the liveness of the network. But more importantly, if you look at staking delegation fees, HIP3, things that we may not even be aware of that are going to continue to be upgrades to the ecosystem, there is real DeFi deployment that's possible, and I think that does not exist today. And then outside of that, Hyperion is actively looking at ways that we can participate more in the ecosystem, whether that's through venture, acquisitions, more broader strategies that make us a company beyond just treasury. And that's kind of our goal and mission going forward.
Maybe this is a question for Max to weigh in on. So I just want to know, plainly, why Hype? There's lots of different ecosystems you could focus on. I'm well aware, Max, you've been one of the most outspoken, visible Hyperliquid bulls. You're investing across the ecosystem, but yeah, I guess of all the different treasury reserve assets that you all could go about choosing, talk about why is Hype the right choice for Eyenovia / now Hyperion?
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to it being a combination of good tech and good economics. Right? I think in crypto, it's rare to find either of those, let alone in combination with one another. And so, personally, going back 18 months now, right, when I first came across Hyperliquid, it was a time in DeFi where I thought, a lot of smart people were working on a lot of interesting products, but we didn't see a lot of, let's say, centralized exchange crypto users, or just less on-chain savvy users really diving into DeFi. And Hyperliquid was kind of a watershed moment for me, at least, where I really saw that migration start in earnest. And, looking back 8 months from today, with the TGE event around Hyperliquid, right? It was also kind of a watershed moment for how to think about the economics the successful blockchain network where so much was given away to the community. The Hyperliquid core team was able to self-finance and all of that. Right? So what we're left with, today is a hype asset that is effectively deflationary, where, protocol revenues go solely to the buyback and, let's just say, sequestration of the asset, to the tune of like 10 to 15% annualized, which is, crazy, right? Relative to every single other asset in this industry. And the underlying platform is, growing up and to the right by all, relevant metrics. So I think, whether Hyperion were just a normal treasury company, it's a very competitive asset in that light. And then to Hyunsu's point, right, like even if Hype went to $1 tomorrow, right, there is innate value in the discounts Staked Hype gives users, or access to perp market deployments it will in the coming months, right? Like this utility that's baked into the asset. And I think it really is like that constellation that made this a very comfortable decision, right? Like there are many treasury company strategies out there at the moment, and I think differentiating yourself is very difficult. But, we have a great asset that we're targeting. And it is, I think a very dynamic business that can be built here, beyond just speculation. So that's what really, did it for us.
To your point about there's many treasury companies out there and more coming to market probably every day or week, something that I've been really curious about, and, glad we're talking to you guys because you can give us a ton of insight into this question, but like, how are people like yourselves going out there and finding one of these NASDAQ-listed names and getting this done? Because give us some insight and details into what goes on behind the scenes to get one of these deals done, because I'm sure it's not easy. But yeah, maybe that's one for Hyunsu.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's multiple components here, right? There's so many parties involved, but functionally, if you are looking to, pivot a company to the strategy where you are accumulating assets on the balance sheet, you have to find one that has fundamentally a very clean or healthy balance sheet, right? And if you are a public company that has seen better times, that is going to be the first obstacle that you're likely going to face. And then in addition to that, you want to get a team and a board and those that are involved with the existing business that are open to this idea, right? Whether, we're kind of in a bit of an echo bubble in this space, but to those that have not been exposed to crypto or blockchain or the kind of strategies that we're doing here at Hyperion, it may seem very foreign and kind of like a big risk to take reputationally as well. And so our job was to really create and get them to understand why this is important, why Hyperliquid is important, why Hype is this asset that we're willing to put $40-50 million worth of assets and more into, and then get them to, be a part of the strategy, right? Because we're not taking away the existing business. This is the new business that's being incorporated, but it's going to be something that we entirely focus on and make as the core function for what we do as we go forward.
Hey, so one other thing I've been curious about is, like, how many people does it take to run this sort of thing? I have no idea head count for Hyperion, for example. And then also, is this like full time for everybody on the team? And then how is the team kind of compensated as well while they're running something like this?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So a little bit about my background, right? I just finished a 4-year tenure at Dharma Capital. So asset manager, registered with the CFPC and the NFA, managing over $1 billion in capital. And at my time there, I was brought on to engineer and deploy, call it the first asset use product. And it was built for Filecoin. It effectively enabled us to work with over 50 data center teams globally, deploying the asset via smart contract on the Filecoin blockchain, while there were contracts that were written in the physical world that determined the conditions and returns and the other covenants and so forth, right? And I was running that as pretty much a one-man operation. And in my time there, we were generating, call it anywhere from 20% upwards yield on over $300 million worth of assets deployed. And I was like, this is a really efficient business. It can this is where smart contracts and blockchains really enable a kind of scalability that isn't really seen other than very advanced tech companies. And so with Hyperliquid, there was just like the same opportunity. So as we are speaking today for the call it the Hyperion vertical of the business, it's me with immense amount of support from Max. And then the great thing about Hyperliquid community, right, is that people are so willing to find ways to help co-market, co-brand, like we did that with Kinetiq, and continue to just create this virtual cycle effect, right? I think that's been the most impactful part of being the public company that represents Hyperliquid and the things that we can do adjacent to that. And then, briefly to comp structure, right? For everyone that's kind of looking at, the amount of funds that were raised and what that kind of means for dilution, everything going forward, everyone that is part of this investor group and myself are aligned because we have milestones. So for myself specifically, Hyperion essentially has to get to $1 billion. Or there are milestones along the way, but my personal goal is that this is the largest and the most successful DeFi company that happens to have a Hype Treasury, but is doing so much more beyond that. And we are bridging public markets, we are bridging the crypto space, and we are bridging all sorts of investors into this foundational element that does not yet exist in the market today.
Hyunsu or Max, I want to talk about like who is this offering ideally designed for? We've got crypto natives, Hyperliquid natives who already hold Hype, and they know how to access the platform. They're very likely staking a majority of their Hype. There is an opportunity here for that levered exposure, but I'm also wondering, like, are you targeting institutions? Like, are you having conversations with institutional type investors?
Yeah, I'll start this off, and Max, feel free to chime in. But right after we announced, we received an immense amount of inbound. So I can't speak to all the details, but call it foreign family offices, large institutional players. I mean, you would be surprised to realize how much friction there is still for any level of investor to access Hype, right? And I think Jeff and the core team did a really interesting job by making it only accessible on the Hyperliquid platform. So as Hyperion exists today, we are effectively the public vehicle to get exposure to Hype. We call it Hype Exposure Plus because we are going to be doing things both on the off-chain strategy side as well as within the Hyper EVM and call it the DeFi strategies. And so it's for anyone that kind of wants to hands off. I fundamentally believe in Hype. I believe in what the team is doing. I believe in their ability to execute, and we kind of handle the rest. So it's easier than, you buying the Hype yourself, staking it, figuring out the tax on the income and all those components. We immediately accrue additional Hype per share for you, right? Hype per share. So that's what we think makes it really interesting. And again, we're seeing interest from both the institutional and the retail side. And so it's just a really well-positioned product where we don't take that lightly, right? We don't think that we've already won or we've won mind share. We want to keep going from here because there's so much that's still yet to be done for Hyperliquid and this ecosystem.
MANTLE is charting a course towards a future of enabling crypto access for everyone, with major endeavors to build MANTLE Banking and MANTLE Index 4. MANTLE Banking means a new crypto neobank that helps users spend, save, and invest across their fiat and crypto finances, all in one account. MANTLE Index 4 is a tokenized fund in partnership with one of the leading tokenization platforms in the market. You can think of MI4 as the S&P 500 of crypto. To learn more, check out group.mantle.xyz, and thanks to the MANTLE community for supporting us here at the Edge Podcast and Edge Newsletter.
Hyunsu, I feel like you were dropping like new fresh memes there, like Hypershare, love that. Hype Plus, so easy. Right to the dome. Love it. I want to get to the on-chain, like, exciting stuff here, but I don't want to gloss over some of this, like, I don't know if it's like kind of off-chain TradFi savviness as well that goes with running these type of operations. So, like, we've seen with MicroStrategy, kind of, they've blazed the trail and they've been at this for a while. And they've launched all these extra products like Strike, Stride, Strife. I won't pretend to understand them all, but what I sort of see is just this, like, there's like a traditional operator savviness as well that goes with this like on-chain component that I know you guys are going to dive into, but maybe just linger a bit longer before we get into the, fun DeFi stuff. What else are you doing on this like off-chain side of things to stay competitive in that side of the market as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the benefit that companies like Strategy and MetaPlanet and some of the treasury companies that have been around longer with larger floats and so forth, they are able to utilize more, call it exotic products. For where Hyperion is today and our core focus, it is very simple. If we can raise money, we can bring in additional funds, we are putting that into purchasing Hype. And on our side, we are more so interested in what is the ecosystem doing? What are the front-end builders, what are they building? What kind of front ends are being built? What kind of teams are looking to play new markets? And how can we be there first and showcase to, the rest of the ecosystem and the rest of the world that there is something very real happening here. So not to deviate too far away from your question, but the way that we're moving right now is very simple, where we would offer, shares, preferred shares. We're not interested in taking on additional debt through a convertible debt instrument. We think that there is more to show and that there will be continued, call it capital deployer interest to a company that is doing more than just, trying to create this flywheel effect to purchase the asset. Our strategies go far beyond that.
Awesome. And you mentioned MetaPlanet in there. I saw Dylan Leclerc on a podcast recently, and he said something that kind of surprised me. I didn't know that there was ways for these companies to create like operating revenue without having like core business. But he mentioned on this pod that MetaPlanet was making 88% of their revenue from selling options. Is that like a strategy down the road you guys will think of as well?
Yes, definitely. Great that you brought that up. Yeah, we're in conversations with a few teams already that have options desks for Hyperliquid. It is a great strategy. It's something that I've had exposure to before in my previous role at Dharma. But what I found, though, is that sometimes it's good when you're in a defensive position, but when you need to purchase the Hype and the demand that we see for, Hype in general, we want to more so focus on strategic deployments of capital to purchase the Hype as we need it, and to build up a treasury. So it is a good revenue generating venue, and we will be using that as well for off-chain.
One of the reasons I was excited to hear about Hyperion, and one of the reasons I was excited for ETH treasury companies as well, is just the fact that you're building a treasury company on top of an asset that benefits from smart contracts. So everything you guys just called out, the problem with Bitcoin is there's no native DeFi for Bitcoin. And so there's lots of opportunity here to be able to generate staking revenue. And then there's all the other DeFi available on chain. So maybe we start with the staking side of the business. Like, what can you tell us about how you're partnering with Kinetiq? And then I want to get into all the other sorts of opportunities or strategies that might be used by Hyperion.
We, I guess, are imminently live with Kinetiq on this mainnet validator. We're finalizing the process to, become activated, basically. And so that gives us a baseline yield, and others can participate as well. In particular, right, we're excited about the fact that Kinetiq will be doing, a lot of institutional business development for Hype, stake Hype in general. And, this validator will be at the heart of that. And so that is our inaugural, revenue line. And then from there on, right, we essentially have, I would say, two additional platforms. The first is the on-chain kind of utilization of Hype, where, because of the utility Hype has, Hyperion has the ability to enter into bilateral agreements with other entities that could make use of that Hype. I think the lowest hanging fruit at the moment is just the fact that staked Hype allows you to have trading fee discounts at the Hyperliquid network level. So, trading firms that do not want to have directional exposure on the balance sheet or do not want to take on the hassle of hedging, a Hype stake could work with Hyperion to essentially lease staked Hype and, reap the fee discounts. Same will go for what's called staking referral bonuses, which is not live on Mainnet yet, but basically an interface operator would be able to attach, some amount of leased stake Hype to their builder code. And so all of the users a given interface, handles the transactions of, they all get to benefit all downstream from these fee discounts as well. So we're definitely excited to, come up with some new IP on that front and kind of sign some pilot agreements along those lines here in the coming weeks and months. And then the other platform, right, just becomes deploying Hype upon the Hyper EVM itself. Obviously there will be significant opportunities around, I think, liquid staking, providing the liquidity for such a system, as well as participating in borrow and lend markets that are deployed there as well. And so all of these venues, right, whether they're on-chain or off-chain, provide a way for us to create, I would say, reliable revenues on top of the, Hype Treasury balance, and, continue compounding that balance sheet.
So I'll add really quickly that, obviously everyone here and the market broadly is aware of Robinhood moving into perpetuals, Coinbase coming to that market, and there is, call it FUD around, can Hyperliquid be competitive? What are they going to do when, new players eat Hyperliquid's lunch? And I think fundamentally what I've seen is that to be a front end that is competitive, maybe the users initially don't care about, if you're paying 100 bips versus 10 bips, but that is going to matter more as these things become more competitive and more so as hyper-financialization continues and more users globally come online to participate in markets. And when I talk to these teams that are building the front ends, very, very sharp young people that are, really good around the UI, UX that they've grown up around, and we have a way to basically support them by deploying the asset that we hold on the balance sheet, make them competitive, engage with them for the longer term and help them, build out applications that can be accessed globally. It's a really, really exciting way to scale that, companies like Robinhood or Coinbase or others may not necessarily be able to do as quickly as the market seems to expect. And so that's why we want to push hard on the lead that we have here and support the people in the ecosystem. And we believe that this will play out in the right way as we continue to move forward.
Man, there's so much in there. Like, I think just listening to you both answer that question, like, there's a lot on the DeFi side that I wasn't even giving credit to. Like, Max, that one thing you mentioned about just trading desks wanting to take advantage of the cheapest trading fees, but not necessarily having to get long Hype themselves, although they probably should, let's be honest. But being able to tap into you guys to, lend that needed Hype, that's like a whole different business line I wasn't even anticipating. And then one other one that I don't know if this was one of you guys that I was talking to you offline, but there's potential here for HIP3, HIP3 as well, I believe. So could one of you maybe just explain what HIP3 is and how Hyperion could tap into this potential as well?
So for those who aren't familiar with it, HIP3 will allow anyone to deploy perp markets on top of Hyperliquid, and no longer will it be just by validator designation. And the mechanics of it are that you have to put up a bond of 1 million Hype, which is a lot. And once you are bonded, you can then participate in deployment right auctions, right? So, if you're bonded and you want to spin up 5 new perp markets, now you basically are whitelisted to participate in the next 5 auctions. And they, function similarly to the current spot market deployment right auctions that occur in Hyperliquid today, right? Where it's just a descending auction every 31 hours. And, the subsequent auction starts at double the previous close. And so what's interesting about this, right, is that, you no longer have to rely on either Hyperliquid Labs or the validator set to basically approve a perp market. You could expect someone or, a startup, for example, to, have a specific focus, right? Maybe it's relevant macro markets or things like US equities, or maybe even like really exotic stuff. They could spin up their own front end. They could surface these markets that they themselves have deployed. They are earning fees on those markets. And, basically get to kind of plug in to the existing liquidity network that exists, right? Because for a Hyperliquid user, right, they're just moving over from one market to the next, and then there's minimal friction involved with that. And I guess this last point I would make is that there is the capacity for slashing. So obviously that market deployer has 1 million hype just sitting there. I think currently my understanding is that it's social consensus. So if you instantiate a perp market with a shoddy oracle, people lose money, for example, you do risk losing a portion of that 1 million hype. But yeah, so that's HIP3 in a nutshell. And we're in a unique position to be able to extend large loans of hype to teams who are keen on building on that model.
Hey folks, I want to tell you about our sponsor, GEARBOX, the protocol that reimagines on-chain lending. With GEARBOX, you can access 10x credit across DeFi or lend for passive yields with single asset deposits and no impermanent loss. Users can access leverage to margin trade, stake, farm, and more. To learn more about GEARBOX, go to gearbox.fi. RUMPEL Labs is revolutionizing DeFi. RUMPEL lets you turn points into profits by tokenizing rewards you can trade from top protocols like Pendle, Athena, Fluid, Symbiotic, and many others. No more waiting for airdrops or TGEs. DeFi's smartest investors are already using RUMPEL to unlock instant liquidity and maximize their yields. So join RUMPEL today and start spinning your points into gold. Learn more at rumpel.xyz. Say hello to Puffer UNIFI. Puffer Finance is expanding beyond native liquid restaking with new products such as UNIFI-based ROLLUP and UNIFI Pre-Confirmations AVS. UNIFI is not just another L2. UNIFI is a based rollup, one that will solve L2 issues, such as slow withdrawals versus instant withdrawals with Puffer UNIFI. Puffer UNIFI is fast, capable of sub-second transactions. UNIFI also has boosted Puffer points, which means if you bridge assets, you earn boosted Puffer points and rewards from dApps on UNIFI. Puffer's core products mean a bright future for Ethereum. Learn more at puffer.fi. Guys, what can you tell us about potential strategies using Hyper EVM? Like, could Hyperion deploy hype into like a looping position? Could you foresee there being, lending and borrowing? I mean, something you could go as simple as using Felix to do, some borrowing against K hype, and then, be able to hold a larger position, get some more leverage, or even spin up a higher leverage looping position. But anyways, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. We kind of, having been around in the space for as long as we have, we're familiar with really intricate ways to create strategies to build leverage and gain additional yield on, the core assets. But for us, what's most important is that we don't put risk to the, treasury position that we built in our hype. So in terms of Hyper EVM deployments, our process so far has been understanding which teams, what they're building, how vetted are they, how many audits they've done. We're not willy-nilly deploying assets into the Hyper EVM, I think, in a way that, I don't want to say it's going to be very precise, very research strategies. And it won't be, I guess, at least to start, a large portion of the hype that we hold, because we don't want to put those assets at risk, right? Smart contract risk, deleveraging, those components could put the assets that we've put a lot of effort into accumulating at risk. We are interested more so on what's happening on Hypercore, but we welcome conversations with teams that are building. Our strategies are not limited to just borrowing, lending, LP, and so forth. We are also looking to do discretionary venture, TVL deployments. It really is anything that we can do as an operating company, but we are going to be extremely cautious about, who we engage with and how we engage with the whole world that's available within the Hyper EVM.
I have a quick follow-up. So assuming you start interacting with some of these protocols, there's potential for airdrops to be accrued to Hyperion. How would you, as this entity, handle, receiving a massive airdrop?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the custody support that we have for Hyper EVM does enable us to receive all of the assets that we may get from potential airdrops. I think it comes down to the team, why we receive the airdrop, what is their intention behind it. For example, we know that there are some teams that are looking to create a mechanism from the fees that they earn to buy back their own token, right? And if we see that there is a lot of momentum and use case, if there are, call it institutional players that are leveraging certain protocols and they become kind of clear winners, then why not continue to support them, find ways to, again, compound our position. We're not really here for the short term of, oh, great, $10,000 airdrop, sell it to USDC. There may be some times when it is better to take that and to accumulate more hype. And that is one of the advantages that we can have in our position. But again, it's a case-by-case basis. We want to understand and continue to work with the teams that are building on this ecosystem. And we believe that there will be more winners on this network than just hype and the what's perceived to be the current winners. There's still a lot more coming.
So guys, there are other hype treasury companies. I'm curious, how are you looking to, differentiate yourselves from these competitors?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for the ones that are publicly out there today, they don't hold enough hype yet to be as competitive as Hyperion, right? So for call it the 1.3 million hype that we've accumulated to date, we pretty much have targets for all of that. We're in conversations with various front-end builders. We're talking to a very large team about a potential HIP3 deployment. So call it the hype is accounted for, and we are moving fast to accumulate more. And then for those that, are not at the market yet today, it's great because I think that it showcases to, again, not just in the crypto space, but Wall Street institutions and funds and so forth, that Hyperliquid is going to be a very in-demand asset that has tangible utility. And then I think we will see broader deviation from companies that are holding hype compared to those that are holding, call it less robust coins. And so we welcome others. We are very thankful to those in the Hyperliquid community and others that have really rallied behind us. And they'll tell me they hold Eyenovia, and they'll talk about the 2020 vision memes, and it's really great. And we're really grateful, but the job's not finished. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep pushing hard, and we're very long-term aligned because we want Hyperliquid to win. And as a result of that, Hyperion will win.
I was just chuckling over here at the 2020 vision memes. Amazing stuff. I want to ask you just a more broader question about these treasury codes kind of moving forward. I think we're early days, but there's just going to be a ton more. We see this in crypto. When anything's successful, we get a fire hose of it down our throats, essentially. So more are coming. Do you think these will always kind of trade at this NAV premium? So it's the way they're kind of categorizing this is mNAV. And right now, last I checked anyways, if you take kind of all the treasury codes that have launched, I think taking out one that was a crazy outlier, you get this mNAV premium up between 4 and 4.5x. So a lot of these traded at premium. MicroStrategy, which is now Strategy, trades that are, last I checked, was around 2x, mNAV of 2. So yeah, do you think this kind of carries on? I guess what are the factors that are creating these elevated mNAVs? And then is this something that you think compresses over time? I know I threw a lot at you, but tackle that any way you can.
Definitely. I think that, as we talked about a little bit earlier, mNAV is almost gets restrictive at a certain point. I've talked to a lot of very elite funds and banks and other institutional players that are frankly exhausted by the amount of pitches that they're getting around new pubcos. And they don't have a very meaningful strategy, and they just want to raise money and buy assets, which, that could be great. But again, Hyperion our goal is not to be just a treasury company. Owning Hype and having it on our balance sheet and staking it and deploying it is just step one in the strategy. I'll make it very clear that we are just getting started. The deployments that we will do with the other builders and other teams within this ecosystem will be eventually showcase like what is possible on this network where you already have immense volume, immense quick execution, great liquidity, right? There is really something so different here. And that is why we were so inclined to go all in on this. And then in terms of, I expect margins to compress for these companies as they grow larger, right? That's just generally the way that things move. But there are even smaller ones that, don't trade at a premium. And I think it's also tied to investor confidence and just generally their ability to execute on what they say they do. The distinction between others and Hyperion is that in the 2-week period that we've closed and officially announced, we've done everything that we said we have, right? We purchased over 1 million Hype. We created our own validator. It's staked. It needs to be active, so I will admit that. But we're already in conversations with teams about deploying the Hype. So the next things are to keep doing what we say we're doing, and we hope that those in the community and those outside of crypto recognize that something really, really big is happening here. And then if we trade at a premium to mNAV, that's great. But the business is more than just what the assets are that we hold on the balance sheet.
Guys, I think this is a good place for us to start to wrap up. So first off, everyone, thanks for joining us. I want to remind our listeners that they can learn more about Hyperion by going to HyperionDefi.com. They should follow Hyperion DeFi on X. Follow Max's personal handle. It's FIEGE_Max. And then Hyunsu, Max, just thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on. Congrats on everything that's in motion. Congrats on the ongoing rebrand. And I'd leave you with any final word for us.
I think this was our first official Twitter Spaces public presentation. So thank you, DeFi Dad, Nomadic, for having us. This was a really great experience. I hope the listeners were able to learn a little bit more about Hyperion and what we're doing. And for those that are, hyped community members, we really appreciate you, and we will continue to do our best to do right by those that are involved with us.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. To stay up to date with future episodes, plus get expert tips, strategies, and exclusive content, subscribe to our free newsletter at the-edge.xyz.